Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 63 of Makai-World Reviews. It is I, of course, the Tony Makai, a master of minds and men. After the uber-violent Ishi the Killer, where do we go from there? Well, we go into the more absurd, the more strange, the more silly, dare I say it. When today, for Miike month, we look at Visitor Q. This is a rather odd movie, and I'm not sure what my audience will make of it. So let's just jump ahead and get into it, of course. Before we start, please like, please subscribe. I'm continually trying to improve this channel. Anything I can do to get your support, click that red button. Let me know. Just let's go. Let's get to it. Visitor Q, directed by Takashi Miike, of course. Like I said about Mr. Miike last week, he has done movies about literally everything, from horror, comedies to surrealist to Ultraman. Ultraman show, anyway. Probably most well known for Ishi the Killer, Audition, his massive horror episode, Imprint, and his Dead or Alive series, written by Ataru Ira, a fairly run-of-the-mill writer who has worked on some Garo stuff, which is kind of like an adult Super Sentai series. It's probably the best way I can describe it. Sadly, awful bad live-action Tiger Mask movie, and a show called Code Name Mirage, which I've heard good things about. Starring Kenichi Ito. The man played Yakuza and a ton of things, including Yakuza 4. I've seen him in a handful of things, Battle Fever J, Dead or Alive 2, and he's a Japanese voice actor for Groot and all the respective Marvel movies. Sonjichi Uchida, a woman who has overcome great adversity to become a talented manga artist and part-time actress. I recall her from Nightmare Detective 2, and while I'm not really familiar with her mangaka, she has a sort of simplistic but effective Devilman style, as the best I can say. Not being an expert in that field at all. I probably only read, two dozen mangas in my life. She has a very rough childhood, some of which they used for this movie. I suppose dramatic effect is the point here. She wrote a semi-autobiographical book called Fatherfucker. What do you think you can tell from the title? Some of the adversity that she probably faced in her life. Her release date was March 17th, 2001. It came out the same week. Memento, Christopher Nolan's first reasonably successful film about an amnesiac who tattoos all of his important information on him. It's pretty good. I've not seen it in a few years, though. It really set the standard for the unusual narrative Mr. Nolan enjoys in his movies. While not one of his best films, I think it's worth a watch. And Spy Kids, the Robert Rodriguez classic. Curious how he went from Desperado, from Dusk Till Dawn, and The Faculty to this. It's not that it's a bad of a movie. It's not even that bad for a kids movie, which has a heavy James Bond vibe to it. And what a cast! Antonio Banderas, Carla Gugino, Alan Cumming, Danny Trejo, just lots of reasonably bigger names in it. Robert did a pretty good job creating a family-friendly action film, as was his goal. Yeah, just fine. Good for kids. Let's go to the plot. Huge trigger warning for everything. Everything. Just if you're triggered by anything, I'm not trying to be rude or inconsiderate or make light of trigger warnings. Don't listen to this. It's not for you. It covers a lot of ground, especially sexual stuff in the family. Now, a few things about this film I want to talk about before getting into the plot. If you watch this, you may notice it's a low-budget film, like very much so, especially for a guy like Miike, who even by this year was doing reasonably decently budgeted films. This was by design, as it was filmed to be part of the final part of a series of films for a small cinema in a place that I'm going to try to pronounce. I looked it up. Give me a break here. Shimoketa Awaza, which is kind of, for lack of a better term, hipster kind of area with lots of small and independently run shops, theaters, bars. It just got a lot of charm about it, so hence the small budget and not usual plot for a Miike film. Speaking of plot, the movie is compared to the Pasolini film Tarima. I'm a Pasolini fan. I mean, of what I've seen, which is 5 of his 12 movies. And yeah, I see the comparison. At first, I totally dismissed the idea outside of the general plot being similar. But there is a level of humor in its own Japanese way that I think Pasolini would have appreciated, because despite the nature of his films, he had a lot of dark comedy in them that is subject more suited for someone a little more intelligent than I. That's something I wanted to mention. Now I can sum this plot up quickly. It's about a man who brings a family together through the introduction of chaos. Simple enough, and honestly, that's the whole plot. I can't really get into any more depth with it as far as story, but I can go over some of the beats of the overall movie. The family, pre-visitor, is a mess, to say the least. The father is a workaholic pervert who has sex with his prostitute daughter who doesn't live at home. The mother is sort of a dominatrix in her free time, but also uses intravenous drugs and is frequently beaten up by the son. Son, as I mentioned, beats his mom all the time because he is unmercifully beaten at school and home by a gang of bullies who frequently fire bottle rockets and fireworks at the home, so disjointed to say the least. The visitor is, or Q, he is quite compelling, a charming man who doesn't say much and is totally cavalier by the oddities of this family. Comes by the family when he hits the dad on the head with a rock and takes him home and begins living with them. No one seems to really care. He then has a staggering effect on the family one by one, and I'll go over those points for each of them. Now, the mother. Q helps her regain her sense of self. She has lost it because her husband doesn't find her sexually attractive. She's turned to drugs and prostitution, but he takes her sexually, and she starts to learn to love herself, flaws and all. She quite literally regains her maternal self when she begins to endlessly lactate, leading to her helping the father with something I'll mention later, before he finally embraces her, loving her like he should, and sucking on her milk for comfort, along with someone else I'll get to. The son, a neat freak, scared of everything, scared of illnesses, scared of the visitor who forces the boy to embrace him like a brother, like a friend, like I don't know. But it makes him respect his mom, the boy embracing the mother's new milk and feeling sorrow for his treatment for her. He makes him try to fend off his bullies, which ends poorly at first, but as a family unit, they kill the bullies, and the boy is, well, happy. He even tells visitor, "You came to destroy us, didn't you? Thank you." The dad, a cowardly, weak reporter, a sexual deviant of sorts. The reporter gets him to, the visitor gets him to reclaim his manhood of sorts, to try better at his job, to defend his son, to love his wife. This all goes to shit when the dad sexually assaults and murders a co-worker, who then has sex with her corpse. He becomes stuck to the corpse penis first, the wife helping remove the girl. They then kill the bullies together and begin taking apart the bodies of them and the woman. We end with him embracing his wife, sucking on her new milk. And the daughter. She's with her father for money. At the very beginning of the film, we see only hints of her in her room, but at the end, the visitor beats her with a rock and sends her home, which she finds a loving family, and she joins her father suckling upon the mother's milk. This movie's fucking gross. Like, if you want gross, we only see... It's I can take violence of any kind, which is sad, but the amount of poop related stuff in this is too much for me. That's my one big weakness for gross stuff. Poop. I just don't like poop. Other gross stuff is the father and daughter having sex, and all the sex in general was pretty uncomfortable and gross. That's the worst for obvious reasons, outside of one other one. In fact, the opening line we see is, "Have you ever done it with your dad?" Violence against the mother is quite cruel, and she's covered with bruises and welts. Speaking of the mother, her frequent and unending lactation towards the end literally coats and covers the kitchen floor enough for people to almost swim in it, like the son does. It's endless, not breastfeeding. I'm not against breastfeeding in and of itself. It's not gross at all, but milk is kind of gross in general. And the way it's presented is, though it's half presented as a miracle of motherhood that she has renewed vigor in her life, I guess I just think milk in general is gross. The bullying is simultaneously hilarious and gross. They fire fireworks and stuff at the hell, like I said, which leads to my favorite moment in the movie. The dad is filming the bullies do this, talking about the glorious bullying, then mentions his dinner was delicious. He has a lovely little wife, and when panning to Q, the visitor, he says, I don't know who this is. We're not acquainted. Like the fact that he lives there now, but the bullies tie up the son and make him take a shit. To what end, I don't know, but they do pee on him, which is frequent in Japanese cinema, being peed on as a tactic of bullying. There are frequent times of people just going to the bathroom for unknown reasons were shown this. The worst of the worst is, of course, the sexual assaults and murder of the co-worker. It's graphic, disturbing, and long. It's the longest scene in the movie with the whole process shown. Rapes her, kills her, takes her home, has sex with her again, and we get the grossest line where he says that even a corpse can be wet, then reaches down and sees shit on his hand and goes, "No, it's shit." Then he's stuck in her. It's probably the grossest, most disturbing stuff beyond the incest. I mean, it's up for debate. Which one do you think is grosser? That is why you may notice I have barely any pictures from this one as well. So much violence and nudity and other stuff, I couldn't find many pictures that were usable. Plus, the filming style is borderline handycam, so a lot of it's shaky. Now, the acting is actually good. Every single person in this did a really competent job. It's low budget. So take that into consideration. I mean, everyone comes off as weird and disjointed and silly, but in a way they're supposed to. I'm surprised at the quality of acting for this, as it doesn't or shouldn't seem to merit it. I was impressed, actually, with the individual performances, the mother and father, respectively. Soundtrack, none to speak of. I don't recall any music. Sounds of birds and TVs, fireworks and pooping. Overall, this is a difficult movie. Is it good? No, I wouldn't say in particularly good. Is it bad? No, it's far away from bad, too. It's weird, it's strange, it's its own kind of thing. It exists in a realm far away from proper review. You can't really give it the kind of star rating or thumbs up or down. It has a lot of commentary. It really does, about society, life, relationships, and family. Both of them are under this mess of disgust, a veneer of pain, sorrow, and quite literally shit. I enjoy this movie in such a way that I appreciate it. I find it interesting, compelling, and even at times thought-provoking. But I also recognize it's kind of a garbagey film, and it gross for the sake of gross, nasty for the sake of it. It's shock for the sake of it. It's something I think you should watch if you enjoy digging in the depths of cinema. That's about as far as I would take it. The movie shouldn't be studied or pined over. Should be watched and horrified by, and maybe, maybe. So overall, what do I think of Visitor Q? Well, I think it's Visitor Q, and not many things can compare to it. Well, that was something different, wasn't it? What did you feel think of my review of Visitor Q? Is this movie too much for you, or are you okay with uber gross movies? Do you think I was fair with my assessment of the film, or do you defer? Let me know down below. So please like, comment, subscribe, get on my Patreon, and let me know what you want me to review. Also, please check out my Instagram for daily Twin Peaks memes, and my podcast, the Dark Peaks Podcast, on YouTube and various other podcast platforms. Next week, Miike month continues as I look at the Yakuza Attack Dog Classic, Gozu. This has been the Makai, Master of Minds and Men. Thank you, and goodbye.